There's no getting away from the fact that we treat animals differently depending on the way they look or how we interact with them. We tend to treat certain animals very positively, such as the smaller, cuter animals. But on the other hand, there seems to be creatures that most of us hate, either because they're very ugly or scary, or because they negatively affect our lives. Some of these animals are rightfully hated, such as parasitic mosquitoes. By transmitting diseases such as malaria, they are responsible for causing hundreds of thousands of deaths per year. Mosquitoes tend to have little to no positive impacts, so it's easy to see why most people hate them. But on the other hand, there are also creatures that are hated that don't really deserve it. These creatures are often misunderstood and are simply just trying to survive. In this video, I will be going through just a few of these creatures, as I'll be going through 4 hated creatures that are misunderstood. And for our first species, we can head over to Australia, as we have the common brushtail possum. This species of possum is the most widely distributed possum in Australia, and can be found in forests and woodlands along the east coast. In these areas, they feed on a wide variety of foods, such as vegetable matter, fruits, and even insects and eggs. Even though they have quite a wide distribution, in some areas they can be quite hard to find, because like many other possums, this is a nocturnal species. When you do manage to spot them, for some people it can be quite hard to identify them, because they tend to have 2 colour morphs. There is a much darker brown colour and more of a neutral grey colour. So far, it's hard to see why anyone would hate this small mammal, but really one of the main factors behind the hatred of this creature is the fact that they are so adaptable. As well as being found in the wild, they are also very good at adapting to urbanized areas, and at night they'll often venture into people's homes and feed on their fruits and vegetables. In some cases, they will even move into people's homes and set up in people's attics. It's understandable that this would be very annoying, but this mammal, rather surprisingly, is more hated in another part of the world. If we make the short trip over to New Zealand, you will also be able to find the common brush-tailed possum, even though it is not native. That's because European settlers introduced this species into New Zealand in the 1850s as a source of food and also as a source of pelts. These animals quickly took over and completely decimated New Zealand's ecosystem. As I've covered many times before, New Zealand has a large number of native birds, and a lot of these birds are ground-dwelling birds. These possums would directly compete with these birds, and it would also feast on their eggs. There are also very few large natural predators in New Zealand, which meant this mammal's numbers could grow and grow. At their peak in the 1980s, their population in New Zealand was around 60 to 70 million, which is around the same population of people in Thailand, the United Kingdom, and France. Luckily, their numbers are a lot smaller today, but they are still very much hated in New Zealand. Personally, I don't think it's fair to heap all of the hatred onto this possum, because we are partly to blame. If it wasn't for humans, these possums would have never made it to New Zealand, and the native birds would have been very thankful for that. In most cases, these animals are hated because they're so adaptable and opportunistic, and the reason they steal from people's gardens and people's homes is because it's just so much easier than finding the food in the wild. They are also not a very aggressive species, and as a semi-arboreal marsupial, they are also very caring for their young. They also help to limit the number of pest insects, and also compete with other pests such as rats. Because these animals are invasive in New Zealand, people choose to use this as an excuse to treat them badly, when really they're only in New Zealand because of us humans. In my opinion, they are very misunderstood creatures, and really don't deserve to be treated so badly. But for our next group of creatures, we can head to pretty much anywhere around the world, as we have the bats. Bats are some of the most interesting creatures on this planet, and they can be found in almost every ecosystem around the world. They account for a quarter of all mammalian species, and they have adapted to suit different niches and different roles in their ecosystems. Famously, some bat species are very ugly, but this isn't a general rule. There are many cute and pretty species of bat, and most of the time the ugly bat species are ugly, because this is an adaptation to help with echolocation. Famously, some bats use this ability to find their prey, as this is a very effective way to find prey at night. The ugly appendages that are seen on some bats help them to focus the sound waves that they shoot out. This ability is mostly seen in the carnivorous bats, whereas some of the day-dwelling fruit-eating bats use their eyesight. The source of most people's hatred towards bats is mostly superficial. They are always portrayed in movies as evil creatures, and they are strongly linked to vampires. Some people view them as rats of the sky, but once again they are very misunderstood creatures. It's easy to understand why some people would hate the vampire bat, because this is a blood-drinking parasite. But in most cases they only feed on livestock, and because they are relatively small, they only take a small amount of blood. In some parts of Africa there is a strong hatred towards the hammer-headed bat, and this is mainly because of their very loud mating calls. Because famously some diseases have been transmitted by bats, people also view them as very dirty, dangerous creatures. But in most cases this isn't true. There are actually many positives that come with having bats around, and they do play a very important role in their ecosystems. One positive to having them around is the carnivorous diet of some species. They eat many pest insects, and they also feed on other pests such as mice and rats. Some bats can eat up to 1,200 mosquitoes an hour, which I'm sure most of you will be very happy with. Fruit-eating bats also do a very good job at dispersing seeds, and this helps with the biodiversity of many of the Earth's forests. So they're only really hated because of the way we portray them, and they really are very useful creatures to have around. But for our next animals we can head to the Americas, as we have the opossums. Although the opossum has a very similar name to the previously mentioned possums, they are completely different creatures. Despite this, they do have a few things in common, as they are both omnivores, and they are also both marsupials. Most people tend to associate marsupials with Australia, but surprisingly there are some in the Americas and other parts of the world. Like many other small to medium-sized mammals across the Americas, the opossum does have to look out for predators. When it does look in the eye of danger, it has a very interesting defensive mechanism. As I'm sure many of you know, famously the opossum plays dead, and you would think that these acting skills deserve awards. But really, opossums have no control over when they play dead, or for how long they do it for. They enter a comatose-like state, and this is an involuntary reaction triggered by stress. These mammals can often be found in the trees, and to help them climb and move around, they have a fifth appendage. Their strange rat-like tails are prehensile tails, and they function almost as an extra arm. This gives them extra stability while climbing, and young opossums even use their tails to hang upside down. Strangely, the reason why some people hate opossums is very similar to the reason why some people hate possums. They often venture into people's homes and gardens, and destroy their crops, and eat their leftover food. As opossums are not the prettiest of creatures, for some people they are also very easy to hate, but once again they are very useful creatures to have around. Their varied diet is one reason, as they'll happily feed on many creatures we view as pests. They also do a fantastic job of taking care of ticks, eating around 95% of ticks that they come across. Possums are also very hardy creatures, and have a very low risk of contracting rabies, and they are also resistant to some snake venoms. In some cases they will even take down venomous snakes, meaning that they can make your neighbourhood safer. So really opossums aren't that bad to have around at all, and in most cases we only treat them badly because of the way they look, and also because they are very adaptable creatures. But for our next species we can stay in the Americas once again, as we have the coyote. Now the coyote is one of the most famous canines in the world, but unfortunately it's also one of the most hated. These mammals are ruthless survivors, fighting, killing and scavenging to stay alive. Today they are found over large parts of North America, but this wasn't always the case. I'm sure many people would be happy if they had a smaller distribution, but these creatures only expanded their range because of humans. They were once only found in the southwestern and plains areas, but when Europeans moved west, they hunted all of the larger predators such as wolves, cougars and bears, and this meant that the coyotes could expand. This is why they can be found in so many states today, and if you're a coyote hater, you only have humans to blame. Just like some of the previously featured creatures, coyotes also do very well in urban areas. They scavenge what humans leave behind, and unfortunately they also go after people's pets and people's livestock. This is a very justified reason to hate these creatures, and in some cases they can be dangerous. Rabid coyotes will sometimes bite humans, and today there has been 2 recorded fatal coyote attacks. This was both in Southern California in the 1980s and in Nova Scotia in 2009. These instances are extremely rare, and in most cases they are not dangerous. But as well as these negatives, there are also many benefits of having coyotes around. They control the numbers of other unwanted animals, and this in turn helps to boost biodiversity. In many areas, coyotes have been hybridizing with dogs, and they were even very closely related to dogs in the first place. This means that the coyotes are only doing what your dog would do in the wild, and although they do cause problems in some areas, they are just trying to survive. Of course there is one very famous hated creature that I've left out, but raccoons are hated for the same reasons as the opossum and the possum. If I included it, I would be repeating some of the points that I've made already, and as most of you who watch these videos are American, I'm sure you have your own opinions on raccoons. But if you know of any other creatures that could have made it on this list, then let me know down in the comments below. But thank you for watching, I hope you enjoyed. If you liked it, please leave a like and subscribe if you want to see more videos like these. But until next time, goodbye.